So I've read through the script and I've decided the next point that I want to actually put some music in is going to be the gap between Act 1 Scene 1 and Act 1 Scene 2. There's been some women who are chatting about the prospect of improving women's rights, and they come out of quite a kind of positive, inspiring kind of conversation. We then have a scene change, right? Now, we don't know at this stage how long the scene changes are going to take. I'm not sure what props and set have got to be moved, and how slick they're going to be. Now, I tend to do anywhere between sort of 15 seconds to 30 seconds, and again, I'll try and make it kind of fairly simple stuff so that I can elongate it or shrink it again. But I'm going to put that at the front. So there's always a bit of a risk when I put a scene change at the front that then flows into the music that's then going to start and underscore the next scene. There's always a little bit of a risk that the scene changes that much faster, or something goes wrong with the scene change and it's that much slower. So what I may do is I may write the initial kind of like 15 seconds or whatever, 20 seconds, and then cut it, have that as its own separate track, and then in almost exactly the same feel come in with the next track. So I'm going to use the same sort of instrumentation to cover the scene change that I would. You can almost guarantee that you've got at least 10 seconds. The scene changes, unless you're incredibly fast, they're never going to happen that fast. So right, I figure this is a sort of good safety net. So I'm just going to put a little marker in to the kind of 15-second mark. So I don't know how fast the piece of music I'm going to write is going to be yet. This becomes tricky when you're putting in markers, obviously, because if you change the tempo later or you change the key signature later, these are all going to be in the wrong places. So I find it's best to put them roughly in now, and then if I change anything about the track, just to make a note of the timing, so in minutes rather than in bars, that I put those markers and then move them accordingly. What I'm doing, I'm coming out of Violet's theme. She's the northern lass, she's the horns section. So I'm going to do some very basic kind of horn up until this point, which is around about 10 seconds in. And then I think I will just do a kind of end around here, I think, which is 27 seconds. And I'll have that moving into the next characters that are coming on stage, which is the Professor and Matty, who is the piano. So I'll try and blend something across those two characters. So for Violet being the horn, sounds rude, doesn't it? Violet being her instrument, being horns. I've come away from the Wagner tuba, which is what I was using before. It's quite a powerful kind of sound tuba. Because I need this to be quite mellow, I've just moved it onto kind of French horns now. So I just want to show you the different types of French horn that Opus East West Platinum has. What I'm doing is using the left hand here just to trigger these keys at the bottom. I have already got some effects on this, I've just realised, but you still get the gist. Some of them are lovely. And when I write the MIDI parts, obviously I can put in these triggers to change the style. Some nice trills. And also up here on the right we've got a whole load as well. More pomp and ceremony up here. Great. You've got all this at your fingertips, and you can switch it around in the flow, which I don't feel like I can do with BBC. I don't have as much different styles, but I mean, how they even manage to play these sort of styles is incredible, right? Okay, so I think the one I'm settling on is this one down here. So I need to write that in. So the first things first, double left click to add a part, and then on the left you can see when you click a key on the keyboard, you can see which one highlights here. And then I put my little marker in now. Whichever other marker gets hit at any point or used at any point, that should at least mean that when I restart the track, it will start with that particular type of play style. So I think I'm saying 3/4 at the moment, and I feel like I've just been playing this, which feels kind of progressively triumphant. It's not, super triumphant, but it sounds positive to me, so I like that sound. But that's in 4/4, so I may just change to 4/4 here, which will upset a little bit of the loop, but that's easily fixed. Okay, that still gives me... Okay, markers wise, of course, I only want to be that far or that far. So that's 15 seconds. So actually, 15 seconds, that's probably pretty good for the initial bit. So I'm going to lay this down with a metronome. Glue those two together so that it keeps the trigger key down here in the same pattern. We'll give them a little quantize. What are we on? 16 T's. Needs to be a little bit tighter than that for sure. There we go. Okay, I'm quite happy with the velocities. They seem quite good. I will mix later. I'm not going to worry about that too much for now. And what I'll probably do is just hang that last key into... Oh, don't know what I pushed. I'll hang the last key into the next bit, and the next bit is the professor. Again, what are we on here? 27 seconds, close enough to 30. We'll make that the end of this. And we'll hang that. And so for the professor, obviously we've got the organ. And we've got the accordion. So I'm just going to have a mess about now, see if I can come up with anything that flows nicely out of the brass into that. And I think what I'll do is I'll keep this 4/4 for now for the whole thing, and then when I come to the start of the next, at the start of the next scene, I might then move back to the kind of Victoriana 3/4. Not sure. Who knows? We'll see. pesky metronome. Again, so for this coming into the next scene, I want to keep it fairly neutral. Just read a little bit of this, and he's about to kind of start introducing another one of the lady boxing champions of the world. I mean, he builds them all up. So there's the next scene, the one that's about to happen after this scene change, is the professor meeting with Matilda, Matty, who's leaning by a lamppost, plying her trade, and he's seen potential in her and thinks she can become a fighter. So it's then a conversation between the two that then progresses into another chap coming and meeting her, and they have a meander and a conversation. The other chap, I believe, is one of the other girl's husbands, who's, hanging out with the lady of the night, but not that was specifically why he was there, but he's not dismissing the idea, if you get my drift. So I've got to put something kind of, I think, playful, sultry, but anyway, that comes after the professor, so I'm going to keep the professor theme for this little bit of the scene change, and then possibly start the next piece with a tiny bit of the professor, maybe the accordion, something simple. See where I go from there. So let's see, can I get anything with the accordion working here? We're starting in G, aren't we? You know what, just record it, see what happens. I'm thinking is it's quite a racy change. Now I've left the tempo at like 140, which is quite fast. Now I think that's absolutely fine because the brass is doing half time, right? Kind of doing 70 really, ish. That's just kind of meh. So I think I might want to slow this down a little bit, because it's a scene change, and actually the next scene isn't an energetic fight or anything like that. So I'm going to sack these off, and I'm going to rethink this. I think I'll still come in from here with the G. Maybe I'll just see what happens with the accordion, see if I can get something else. It was a bit too fisherman friendly, that one. With Victoria and London. I mean, there's fishmongers, but yeah, that didn't work. That did not work. I've also got the Matty piano coming in, so I could potentially. Okay, bit too 1920s there. A little too ahead of its time, perhaps. Again, some of this I need to think kind of 3/4. keys here. Would the piano work? I'm not sure. I feel like the pipe organ is probably more for stuff with the professor that's set in and around the boxing ring. You know, like the kind of show element. So I think maybe on the street I'm going to keep it accordion. So. A bit too melancholy. It's not moody what's coming next. This could take a while. Probably should have recorded that. Quite unnecessary. Right. See if we can't fix this. Always kind of worth checking. I mean, I don't even know what time pattern I've done here. Yeah, I'm starting to think I've possibly messed up a little. Let's shove audio that away. Click in a little closer here. This is probably 16 T's, this bit here. I would imagine that's a bit more like it. Okay. I think you should be there, and you should probably be longer. We'll see. We'll see. Let's run it from the top to see if this is a good enough basis. Okay, I know we've got Matty coming in. Do I really want to try and include the piano? Minors, majors. Hard to call. Something like that might just be nice, little nod to her coming in rather than. So with these pianos, what I've done is I've mentioned before, I've layered them. There are three pianos. The primary one that I'm using for the main sound, which is The Gentleman in a Pub, it's called. I figured was the closest thing I could get to a kind of honky-tonk piano. But I've then put another Contact 7 called The Giant, which has really, I mean, I love this piano. It just got massive depth, as you can see by the illustration. But that carries a real lot of weight at the kind of bottom end of the piano. And then Noir, which is, you know, again, you can imagine it's in a kind of velvet jazz room kind of thing, right? So that's got some really nice tones. And actually some of the mechanics that you can hear on certain pianos, they'll have the ability to adjust different elements of it, right? And one of which is the mechanical sound of the action of the keys, blah, 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 the pedal and the felt, right? So I don't really want any of the pedal to come through, only because it's tricky to mix. If you've got the piano on its own, it sounds really nice. It sounds like a real live recording, which is great. If you've not, it can often kind of interfere, or I find anyway, it can interfere with the mix later on, because you sort of hear all these noises that you don't quite know where they are, and that actually distracts from what you want. So there we are. So I'll put those three together. Now what I do once I've laid in the part of all three of them is I go in, before I do this, of course, I need to actually quantize them all properly. And I don't really think I wanted that. It sounded a bit rubbish. You know what? I'm going to have a listen. Let's quantize first. And we'll line them all up. That definitely needed to be a bit clinkety, technical term. Right, so we're lining them all up, so we're happy with that. They're all lined. So the primary piano I leave on a fixed velocity. No, don't mean there, do I? Can't talk. So the primary piano I leave on a fixed quantize. Near enough. I always kind of have my quantize slightly human, so if you really zoom in, it won't be perfect. Otherwise, it just sounds like it's been programmed by a machine, which kind of has, but you know, it's also been played by a human. So on the second, on the Giant, I go into that one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it ever so slightly, so like really small amount to the left by 1 notch. And then in the other piano, the Noir, I'm going to move it to the right by a notch. And what that does is it just sort of offsets everything, but in a real subtle way. Again, it's not been mixed, it's not particularly loud. Just ramp it up a little bit so you can hear it a bit better. Take two. And there you go, so it gives that tiny little effect. Again, the issue I really have with something like this is that I know the sound I want and I'm not able to really create it. You want Hans Zimmer's piano. I don't know if you can buy it somewhere. If I could buy it, I would buy it, because it would be perfect for this. But there you go. Anyway, that's that so far. So I think for now, I'm not going to worry too much about the scene changes, padding them out, because until I really know the timing, I can make notes on those later, and they're also not essential. We're not going to get to trial the scene changes till right up near performance date, so there's no real point. I may as well just keep this and move on to the next. Which I'm going to set up now. Track 4, this is my folder system here. Now I'm pretty sure this is going into scene 2. That one scene 2, and then I put a little page reference, and I do all of these in folders. Page 9. And then I put a little note in the title. I just can't spell professor. Okay. You know what prof will do? And I create each track inside its own folder. The reason being is that any audio parts or little bump downs or whatever, it's much easier if everything's in its own separate folder for you to go in and make changes and edits later on. Okay, so I've saved that. Again, you want to be really careful. Make sure on the top left hand side you can see that the title has changed. But double check that before you delete everything like a numpty, like I've done many times before. Okay, so I know I want to go back to 3/4 for this one. So I'm going to change that. Okay. And now I have the process of reading through and putting in my markers in, which I won't bore you with, but I'll be back once I've done that.